Joining us on Zoom this morning, we have Glenn, John, and James. And here in the Zendo with me, I have Dean, Kimberly, Joe, Aaron, Joel, Chris, and Jill. We're going to start today with the Way of the Bodhisattva on chapter 6, verse 43. What I want to do to start with, besides putting on my glasses so I can see, in going through the commentaries, there's a natural break at starting with line 52. So what I want to do to start with is simply read verses 43 through 51. And let's do that to start with. So starting with from the Way of the Bodhisattva, their weapons and my body both are causes of my torment. They their weapons, I my body brandished. Who then is more worthy of my rage? This body, running sore in human form, merely touched, it cannot stand the pain. I'm the one who grasped it in my blind attachment. Whom should I resent when pain occurs? We who are like children shrink from pain, but love its causes. We hurt ourselves through our misdeeds, so why should others be the object of our rage? And who indeed should I be angry with? This pain is all my own contriving. Likewise, all the janitors of hell and all the groves of razor trees. Those who harm me rise against me. It's my karma that has summoned them. And if through these beings go to hell, is it not I who bring their ruin? Because of them, and through my patience, all my many sins are cleansed and purified, but they will be the ones who, thanks to me, will have the long-drawn agonies of hell. Therefore, I am their tormentor. Therefore, it is they who bring me benefit. Thus, with what perversity, pernicious mind, will you be angry with your enemies? If a patient quality of mind is mine, I shall avoid the pains of hell. But though indeed I save myself, what of my foes? What's fate's in store for them? If I repay them with harm for harm, indeed, they'll not be saved thereby. My conduct will in turn be marred, austerity and patience brought to nothing. I think the first thing I'd like to do is just ask, any of the lines that you read or heard, anything stick with you? Anything raise a question before we go to the commentaries? Okay. Nobody's going to be brave. Huh? All right. I could ask you about the janitors of hell, but we won't get into that right now. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go to the commentaries and go through this verse by verse. And in fact, I'm still going to be using the Pima Chodron, Becoming Bodhisattvas, the one that we've been using up to this time, that people can see. And hopefully on your screen it's forward, but that's backwards. But I've also found a second commentary that I'm going to be speaking from as well. And this is an older one. It's called The Nectar of Manjushri's Speech, and it is by Kunzang Pelden. He is another Tibetan. He was born in 1863 and died in 1947. But in some of the research that I was starting with, they talked about this commentary as being a very powerful one. So I'm going to be going back and forth between these two, basically based on what I thought was a better commentary on each of the. But let's start with 43. I'm going to read the text now of the sutra from Pema Chodron because they are slightly different translations. So for 43, she says, "Their weapons and my body both are causes of my suffering. They their weapons drew while I held out my body. Who then is more worthy of my anger?" And what Pema says about this is the words or actions of others can wound us as much as any weapon. The meaning of this verse is that both their words and my reactivity are equally responsible for my pain. We can't stop others from saying mean words, but we can work on developing patience. The thing that I saw about this whole set of verses is that really he's kind of turning on its head the way we normally think about these things. The way we think about being hurt and our torment and reacting to that person as opposed to understanding the process and understanding that from a Buddhist perspective, we can be hurting them, not intentionally, as bad as they're hurting us or worse in some ways. And that's what he's going to lay out for us, I think, in the long run. Verse 44 says, "This human form is like a running sore, merely touched, it cannot stand the pain. I'm the one who clings to it with blind detachment. Whom should I resent when pain occurs?" And so Pelton says about this, our bodies are unable to bear the slightest sensation of cold or heat. They crave for food, for clothes, and for the company of a mate. Yet left to themselves, they are unable to satisfy these needs. It is the mind that must make contact with objects for satisfaction to occur. We should not be angry with others so much as with ourselves. So he's going to make this he's going to tell us this, that gradually that our anger, perhaps we need to take a better look at ourselves and who and what we get angry with. 645, Shantideva says, "We who are like senseless children shrink from suffering, but love its causes. We hurt ourselves. Our pain is self-inflicted. Why should others be the object of our anger?" And then Pema says, "How sad it is that we, like children who don't know any better, continue doing the very things that cause us suffering. We love these causes, the addictions, the gossip, the overwork, feeding our critical mind. We associate them with comfort, satisfaction, and well-being. Why don't we get angry with ourselves for hurting ourselves rather than blaming others? Again, going back to that, why do we blame others for our troubles? And then verse 46 and 47 actually go together. Although Pema does make a specific comment about 46. Who indeed should I be angry with? This pain is all of my own contriving. Likewise, all the janitors of hell and all the groves of razor trees. Pema comments at this point, the hells in which we find ourselves are the projections of our mind. Our pain is for the most part self-inflicted. And then 47 goes on, those who harm me come against me, summoned by my evil karma, but they will be the ones who will go to hell. And so it is myself who bring their ruin. And here, Pema talks about the 47 to 51 and says of these, that these are contemplations on pain that purifies oneself but hurts the person who inflicts it. When someone harms us, they create the cause of their own suffering. They do this by strengthening habits that imprison them in a cycle of pain and confusion. When they harm us, we unintentionally become the means of their undoing. What's true for them also is true for me. The way I regard those who hurt me today will affect how I experience the world in the future. We can strengthen our resentment or our understanding and empathy. We can widen the gap between ourselves and others, or we can lessen it. This so much reminds me, actually, of the process of therapy in many ways. The process of therapy is such that, and it also reminds me of Shohaku's comments about living by vow. We are, well, let me step back for a second. I spent 3.5 years, I was on both sides of this as a psychiatrist. I spent 3.5 years in therapy with an analytic therapist. I was staring at the ceiling the same way you stare at the wall. And I was free associating, meaning I said whatever came to mind, which sounds a lot like Zazen, except that you don't say it out loud. But the change comes about gradually because we do what she was just talking about. You come at it a little at a time. You have a choice every day to make things better or not. It isn't that we won't get angry. It is that when we get angry, we need to stop, just as we were talking about previously in several of the other things that we've talked to. We need to stop ourselves and decide how we're going to react. I used to tell my patients all the time, one of the earliest things is, emotions are reactive. You're not responsible for them. They're just going to come to you. It's what you do with them. And this text is telling us the same thing. Whatever happens, you have the opportunity to stop and decide how you're going to react to it. And hopefully, with each passing day, you make small choices that make things better. What Pelton says about these verses is, all the pain in this and future existences is all our own making. It is produced by our own deeds. Who else is there to be angry with? Indeed, no one. Those who injure us, who now come against us, do so summoned by our own evil and aggressive behavior in the past, our own karma. So we are not the ones who bring ruin. He then goes on to talk about, as Pima did, that as they attack us, we become the source of their torment. We become the source of their bad karma, not intentionally. Go ahead, Joe.
You mentioned something about emotions a minute ago. So I'm wondering, what is the difference between emotions and feelings? And at what point in emotions and feelings are we supposedly in control of our thoughts?
Basically, I think that's a semantic difference. And I don't think I think in common usage, there's no difference, really. In the common usage of the way we use the word
if
feeling.
Say I feel disappointed, is that an emotion?
Yes. If you're feeling it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's feeling disappointed, feeling sad, feeling angry. Pick a feeling. They're pretty much all emotions. At least I can't think of any exceptions to that at this point. And I've always, I've in terms of both the way I think about it and I think the way my patients approached it was that those were two equal words. There was no differentiation that they made between them or that I made between them. So.
I interject here, the Buddhist terminology, which might be helpful in the context of what we're looking at, there would be a distinction between feelings and emotions. Emotions fall under the mental formations, impulses, in terms of the skandhas, and feelings are their own skandha. So feelings in Buddhism, there are only three: positive, negative, neutral. Neutral means you ignore it. Mm-hmm. Positive, you're attaching. Negative, you're averting. So emotions, from that standpoint, then, are obviously very intimately connected to feelings. But some people kind of can, and the Dharma teachings point to this. Some people can almost be drawn to negative feelings. This is our pattern, and it seems crazy when you sit back and look at it, which is why the teachings are inviting us to do just that. Say, why are you doing that? Why are you so drawn to these negative feelings? You need to really see that and work on that. As John says, little by little, but make that vow that you're going to try to revert to not entering into those hell realms. So I think it can be helpful to see feelings and emotions as these different things, mainly because we can become attracted seemingly to negative feelings in terms of falling into that pattern.
So the neutral, I'm sorry, the neutral feeling, I'm wondering, you said we let go of it. Could we just accept it? Is that neutral also?
The neutral feeling, I think we're more aware of it through practices like Zazen because of our open awareness. So when I say we ignore it, that's our normal state. That's not calling out to our attention to attend to it. So unless we're practicing open awareness where we're aware that we're present with this, but we don't feel either positive or negative. Yeah, that's not our normal way of seeing things. So if we're not having a reaction, that's why social media and advertising, they're trying to get a feeling, be it positive or negative, and they're finding negative feelings are even more impactful. They will get your attention better. And then emotions arise out of that. But I think the feelings are more fundamental in
I was going to say, and from a Buddhist perspective, feelings are the polarity of emotions.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to work on that in a while.
Yeah.
Because it's very different
It is.
than the way that I'm used to thinking about it.
Right.
So could either of you comment more on what emotions are from a Buddhist point of view, as opposed to feelings?
You want to have at it first, right?
Please, only because there's a difference between the way I'm thinking about them and that. So I would prefer that you take that one.
Sure. In my mind, emotions are kind of, they're looking at a bigger picture. So if there's an emotion of, let's say, jealousy. Jealousy is based on certain things in a pattern that gets structured between those things. You know, somebody having something, or an observer who wants to have that same thing, and a feeling of jealousy arises. So I think emotions are kind of maps of particular types of situations that arise out of the situation itself is my sense of it. And anger also has, from a Buddhist standpoint, anger is often, but it's also multi-layered. And I was thinking of this as John was talking, in terms of how we process these sorts of things. Initially, I find that that anger, maybe the first form of anger that starts to lighten up is the feeling of threat to self, because there's that type of anger. But then even once that sense of self drops off, there are feelings of anger, and I know this Sangha has that, myself included, when there's injustice. So it's impacting others, maybe all beings. And that, also causes anger to arise. But it's again this relationship of seeing a threat that causes us to become angry. A threat that's either pending or has actually occurred. So there's actual harm done, where something like jealousy is just kind of greed. I want that. There's no sense of harm. Just, I want it. He's got more than me. I want whatever he's got. I want a house as good as that. So again, it kind of circles back to this sense of emotions kind of being based upon particular archetypal situations that generate the emotions. That's just the way I see them playing. So Joel's been patiently.
You were talking about the feelings as positive, neutral, and negative, but it reminds me of the brain words. They're gone now. I talked too long. It's attraction or aversion, right?
Right.
Is it like that, or is it not? Is that different from the feelings?
Well, there's a connection again. So there in an intimate connection, but it's difficult to describe. It's actually a good example of how trying to describe something with more words becomes almost futile. It's like, do you know what it is to have a positive feeling? Your own experience, what does that signify versus a negative feeling? And we can throw more words on top of it, but I think it still comes down to, Bob Dylan's famous Dharma teaching, how does it feel? That's feelings. And you have to know how it feels firsthand. That intimate study of the self Dogen talks about. That's as intimate as it gets. How does it feel? Because that's something you can only really get your feeling. You can empathize with somebody, but you can't feel what they're feeling. But you can feel your feeling. And then it's just a matter, the reality is, you might consider positive feelings pretty different from what I do. But we all, I think, or pretty much everybody, has a sense of what's positive and negative. And I just go with that. Go with that. Because that's all we can go with.
Well, I got to think about feelings preceding emotions, but
Yeah.
so we'll leave that. I'm going to verse 48. Because of them, and through the exercise of patience, my many sins are cleansed and purified, but they will be the ones who, thanks to me, will have the long-drawn agonies of hell. Therefore, I am their tormentor. Therefore, it is they who bring me benefit. Thus, with what perversity, pernicious mind, will you be angry with your enemies? Belton says about this, we are able to practice patience towards the enemy who harms us. Our many evil actions of the past will be cleansed and a great accumulation of merit will be brought to completion. It is thus that our enemies bring us benefit, but they will have to languish in the hell of unrelenting pain. It is we who are their tormentors, while it is they, our enemies, who do good to us. And then the last two are, for if a patient quality of mind is mine, I shall avoid the pains of hell. But though indeed I save myself, what of my foes? What's fate's in store for them? If I repay them harm for harm, indeed, they'll not be saved thereby, and all my noble actions will be spoiled, austerity of patience brought to nothing. And she says this is the same essential message. Retaliation doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help others, and it doesn't help me. And Peldon says about these two, it is the cultivation of patience that saves us from going to hell. On the other hand, what is there that can save our enemies from such destiny? Nothing. We may well reflect that as bodhisattvas, we are in the wrong if we fail to protect our aggressors. But while at the moment we are indeed unable to provide them with adequate protection, the fact is that if we actually harm them in retaliation for what they do to us, it is certain that we will be giving them no protection at all, for the anger and the other negativities in their minds will greatly increase. This whole teaching to me is so significant in the sense of just what I said, kind of turning on its head the very way we think about anger and how people respond to us, and how we how we respond, not how people respond to us, but how we respond to anger or any emotion. That we have choices that we can make, that if we don't stop ourselves, that we further build up those forces in ourselves that deal with the anger, that make us angry, not think about it, reactive. And it's only by stopping and thinking and not proceeding beyond that, that these things, that we have a chance every day, multiple times, to move beyond anger, to really put it in its, to accept its place, to work at being able to let it go without jumping into it with both feet, as we all do periodically. God knows I have, and continue to periodically. These days, more often politically than anything else. But any thoughts? Yes, James.
Great, thank you. So a couple of things, but first on the text, I don't quite get these two 48 and 49. It seems not just counterintuitive, but counter to my experience. So first I want to make sure I understand what the texts are saying. It sounds to me like they're saying in 48 and 49 that if we respond in a patient way, non-reactive, then the enemy, person who's coming at us with, the bad stuff, will their negative emotions will be exacerbated, the long drawn agonies of hell. And then we will be their tormentor. And that's the second part, almost like it's a good thing, sort of like it's, vindictive or something like that. So does that sound like it's what the text is trying to say?
My sense of what the text is trying to say, not that by default, in the same way that, let me turn it around a little bit. If you respond to someone in anger, then you are setting up your own karma. It's also going to affect how you think from that point on, and it will be negative. In this sense, what he's talking about is if someone attacks you, though you're not trying to do anything to them at that point, by default, that's what happens to them. They get stuck in their own anger. And you, in that sense, become their tormentor. In other words, they're going to have a negative consequence to what they do to you. Doesn't mean you're purposeful, doesn't mean you should feel guilty about it or anything else. It just means if they're doing this to you and they're not aware of what's going on, you become even though that's not purposeful, you become their tormentor in that way. Does that
I
make
understand
sense?
that. It has that, though. So good. Yes, it does make sense. And so, yeah, I think I'm picking up what the text is trying to say, but that hasn't been my experience, and that doesn't seem to kind of jibe with other teachings. If we read,
Can you,
so
yeah, can
coming
you tell
into
me?
a situation, yeah, coming into a situation initially with patience, with positive feeling, easy manner seems to kind of tip the scales that even if somebody does come in angry, that it'll go a different direction. If somebody does come in angry with the guns blazing and we respond, or I respond with patience, with listening, with a calm demeanor, it really does seem to, at a minimum, not make the situation worse, if not kind of change the situation and, cause a different outcome. But it sounds like that's not what the text is saying. The text is saying that if you come up with patience, then, they'll be suffering the agonies of hell.
I think those are two sort of different things. In one sense, you are saying that your patience then is affecting the other person and they are responding to that. And I think that then that may be a different thing than if somebody is just in your face screaming at you. And no matter what you say, it's not going to stop them. I mean, all of these are fluid situations, and they're not absolute either. So while they can be mixtures of, I think they can be mixtures of good and bad. In the situation that you talked about, the person may still be angry, but they may not be raging at that point. So you've lessened that. You've helped them. Perhaps you've helped them see some things. But if they're still stuck on their anger, they're still stuck on their anger. Even if it's lessened, it's still there.
Right. So yeah, I guess it depends on situational, and also if you play the long game, they might still display a whole lot of anger now, not be able to get out of that emotional flooding. But the next time, when they see that there hasn't been that negative reaction right back to them, maybe they'll be a little less, likely to flip the bird, whatever the display is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Thanks.
Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that a lot of this reminds me of what Dean was teaching about on Thursday, related to each moment being perfect just as it is. So there is a myriad of interdependencies and karmas on both persons.
Yep.
If we're just talking about two people, both persons' part, that are all coming together
Yes.
to create that particular fluid moment.
Yes.
So my karma has created this situation, their karma has created this situation. And like you said, it's counterintuitive because we don't generally think of, well, how can I help this person?
That's screaming at my face. Yes.
But yet, there's all kinds of parallels in all of the major religions. I'm not
Yes.
familiar with Christianity, but turn the other cheek, love thy enemy, or so.
Yeah.
So it's really, really a helpful perspective to be able to see, like, well, what's my part in it? Not just my reaction, but what's my part in it? Like, how did I attract this situation? And then secondly, how can I make it better by doing something compassionate, or, if it's a dharma gate for the other person, how can I facilitate that in some way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing teaching because it really kind of flies in the face of, somebody's hurting me, our usual.
I'm going to be patient, and
Yeah.
I won't be their tormentor.
Right.
That's not the way I approach it usually, but
Takes practice.
yeah, indeed. Joe.
Yeah, and the part that called out to me though in verse 49 was the second sentence. Therefore, it is they who bring me benefit. My first thought was, what is that benefit to me? How am I being benefited? And the only thing that I could think of in response to that is my opportunity to practice one of the paramitas, patience.
Yes. Yeah.
So is that
Exactly.
okay?
The world gives you that all the time.
Dharma gates.
They are boundless. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I understand it. Is it's the opportunity to practice the paramitas. It's the opportunity to do the practice.
And I like what Chris pointed out, which is it begs the question: is what is my complicity in all of this? And which we don't often very often think of, especially when we're in the middle of it. Like, how did I bring this upon myself?
Yeah, I think that's the one I think most people don't even think about is there some way I brought this on myself?
And even if we think about it, we might not be able to see all of the connections because they're myriad. There's karma is so complex that
Absolutely.
you might not even be able to see the connections.
Absolutely.
So it's a great question to ask, like, what is my part?
Joel.
What it makes me think of is how often I've heard people say that can be harmful. How did I bring this upon myself? Things happen, and we can't see that there's any connection. Well, is it because there is no connection, or at what point is it harmful to think about how somehow I've done something to deserve or have put myself somewhere?
I think the easiest answer I have to that is as long as you make yourself equal. In other words, how do I bring these things on myself? But also understanding there's the other part to it and not just owning, I must have done this to me. But rather, there's a part in my karma that maybe I'm attracting some of this. How does that work? Not, oh my God, how did I bring this on myself? I mean, it's a subtle distinction, I think, but it's the difference in the way that I would go about it. And that may be more informed by my psychiatric background than my Buddhist background. I don't know. But that's the balance that I would think would be there, is the balance between, okay, there's a possibility that I have some karma here. How does that work? That's probably the best way to ask that. Rather than just saying, how did I invite this onto myself? Because I think that falls back onto more likely being much more self-critical than you need to be a lot of times.
Yeah, it's a good point that Joel brings up, though,
Yeah.
because it kind of, for me, it circles back on a matter of skillful means in terms of dealing with a difficult situation. What he's describing, I would
Yeah,
use as an example, and I think you need an example to really pull it out, something like an abusive relationship where the person who's receiving the abuse is just focused on, well, what am I doing? Because the perpetrator is going to try to, indicate it's all your fault. Kind of a form of gaslighting.
that's-
if you buy into that. So it's certainly always pretty helpful to look at your own what leads you into that. But sometimes what led you into that is just happenstance, coming together circumstances, and it might be time to exit and seek out a new set of circumstances. To be able to just kind of look at it in that way and come away from one relationship with a little more prajna in terms of evaluating circumstances, so that the next time maybe you're a little less apt to fall into that type of a relationship. So I think from a practical, more psychological standpoint, there's definitely learning that we should be deriving from experiences, and being able to look at what we're bringing to it is an important element of that learning process. But if it's just focused there, then you're not learning enough. To learn enough, you need to look at yourself, but the greater picture as well. The whole thing needs to come into play. Starting with self, maybe, but don't end there. Because self, of course, ultimately becomes the whole thing. So it should naturally take you there through this practice.
I think one of the ways that I've thought about this is the idea of bringing something upon yourself. Is like, if you have an experience that is a dharma gate in some way, but you like avoid kind of like the work that it's calling you to do, is that then something else will happen in my life and I have to do the work that I avoided previously. And like that's how I kind of am understanding like this is happening again because I didn't deal with it.
take care of it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think, or maybe that's life.
Yeah.
So you might as well deal with it. Just make sense.
Whatever you don't deal with is going to
Coming back.
Yeah, the old satchel page. Never look back, because whatever's behind you may be gaining on you.
Okay.
Okay. I am, and we are, we're due to go till 11:30.
I didn't wear a watch since I'm not teaching today.
Okay.
I need another time.
Yeah, it's like
Where
5,
are we at?
we're about 5 to 11 right now.
Oh,
So,
okay. Well, we keep going.
all right. I have
A
not,
bit more until we start getting burned out. We'll let you
All right.
know when that happens.
that's fine. I will warn you that I didn't prepare this part, but we have two good people who can tell us.
We have more than two.
Yeah, we have many more than two. We have two teachers, so three teachers. So, all right, let's start with 52. Because the mind is bodiless, it cannot be destroyed by anyone. Because of mind's attachment to the body, this body is oppressed by pain. Scorn and hostile words and comments that I do not like to hear. My body is not harmed by them. What reason do you have, O mind, for your resentment? I mean, I'll do about 5 of these here.
I
The-
think that's a bit much.
You all right? We'll stop with these two.
I can't take in that much in
All
one go. I'm sorry.
It's the difference, I think, in the way we approach it. I read the whole thing because I need a big picture to start with, and then I go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Let's do that.
It's an advantage.
Wow.
That way, and just kind of,
All right.
2 stanzas, I think, is a good.
All right. That's fine. We will do that. And I, of course, pulled my bookmark out. Here we go. So first of all, actually, Pima quotes 3 before she stops. Before she gives a commentary.
Or those
Fifth-
Tibetans.
Yeah, you can't. The mind is bodiless. This is the translation that she uses. The mind is bodiless. By no one can it be destroyed, and yet it grasps the body tightly, falling victim to the body's pain.
Let's stop there.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah. And it's kind of good that nothing's been prepared here, because,
Yeah.
I mean, when I have occasion to do this, I kind of like just, taking this text and bringing my own read to it. So, this is a good place to do that, in fact, I think, because of the way this is set up. Just looking at this stanza, the mind is bodiless. By no one can it be destroyed. Because we, from the standpoint of Prajna, we would see that both mind and body, that whole distinction, the mind-body dualism, sweep that off the table. So the mind is bodiless. What is that pointing to? I mean, it's not only bodiless, but it's I might go
Small.
where it's saying the mind is empty.
I was going to say the small mind is mindless.
Yeah, well, the big mind too.
That too.
So let's just say the mind is empty,
Mhm.
and therefore by no one can it be destroyed. Now that good solid dharma, I get that. I'm on board with it. In other words, it's a fabrication, and yet it grasps the body tightly. And we need to see the truth of that too, the unity of mind and body, which medicine understands pretty clearly these days.
Mhm.
Because it's one. So we're not saying there's no mind, there's no body. We're just saying they're not different, they're not distinct. They are
Right.
deeply interdependent. So whatever is happening to our so-called mind, obviously it's affecting the body too, because they're not separate. And that's why it grasps the body tightly. I mean, it's interdependent. than falling victim to the body's pain. The mind does. It naturally goes there. So to work with this through patience is to take this natural state and bring an awakened viewpoint to it. So just looking at that stanza, that's what I take away from it in the context of the chapter being on patience. The mind is empty, so it can't be destroyed. So it can't, not only can it cannot be destroyed, but it can't be harmed. And that's kind of where why we can practice being open to whatever's arising. Meet each thing that arises. Be present with dukkha. Because it's kind of coming from this recognition, I think that the mind can't be harmed or destroyed. I can stay there with it, rather than immediately turning and running because, oh my God, this is going to overwhelm me. It is going to harm me. Find that actually I can stay there. And it takes a while for people coming into practice to even reach that point.
Yeah.
Because that's a big, big deal. Yeah. To see that, oh, I can actually sit for 30 minutes and be present with some pain that I'm feeling.
Yeah, literal physical.
At the end of the 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not destroyed by it.
Yeah.
So.
Ranigan.
Hi, I'm sorry to come to this so late, but things happen. My question about what you're discussing is that what about, I have a number of friends that have Alzheimer's, and how does that apply to what you're talking about?
Gee, why don't you ask me a hard question? I got to think about that one for a while.
Maybe it doesn't apply, but it's in my mind.
I have a question about that.
Oh, okay, jump in. This is
I have a
Joe.
question for you, Ranigan. Is so the friends with Alzheimer's, is that any different than if you have friends with cancer or friends with missing limbs or anything else?
I think I'm probably wrong, but I'm thinking that it is different because they don't have access to their own minds.
So the difference is your perception of somebody else's agony?
And also my own.
It becomes different because, or at least where what's going on in my mind about how it's different has more to do with being able to form cognitions that, I mean, if the apparatus isn't working right, it's still, you are still the whole person, although that you now have some deficiencies that are different. I don't know. I don't know. Dean, do you have any thoughts about this? I'll get back to you, James. I saw your hand up there.
Yeah, and I would combine Alzheimer's with severe mental illness.
Sure.
Too.
Yeah.
Things like psychosis.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when I did my 3-week intensive practice at San Francisco Zen Center, that was kind of very much in my mind at that time. So I remember having a dokusan with Blanche Hartman, and that was what I brought into that conversation with her was not Alzheimer's, but that very near relative of severe mental illness. And how does one practice with that? Because it really is a different animal. I agree with you, Ranigan, about that piece to it. And Blanche didn't have any ready response. She certainly understood that presents a quandary to us, and just shared her own experiences working with those kinds of scenarios, but not really even attempting to give some sort of a pat answer to it. It's really a big challenge, because people are incapacitated in a way that really impacts their what we would call their agency, their ability to have any measure of what I'll call bracketed control over their actions, mental, physical, the whole shebang, which is true for psychosis or Alzheimer's. And in that scenario, we look at, because all of our Dharma practice is kind of predicated on this intention and practicing, just being able to remind ourselves through the practice of mindfulness of our vows and what my intent is, what I'm going to do to work with this. But Alzheimer's, psychosis, throws that all out the window. So it's a hugely challenging thing for our Dharma. Our Dharma is kind of predicated upon a certain segment of what I'll call the spectrum of human capabilities. And when somebody kind of goes off that spectrum, which I would consider Alzheimer's or psychosis to be, it's very challenging.
Well, and these are not, I mean, while we put Alzheimer's under neurology and psychosis under psychiatry, they are both severe mental illnesses. It's just the source of where they come from. So, yeah, Kimberly.
Everything that was just stated is super accurate. But as far as my understanding of the teachings and the Dharma, I think that the focus is on the person practicing the Dharma. So the focus, just to bring it all back into perspective, or at least my understanding of the teachings, is to focus on one's own suffering, because the person, though so horribly heartbreaking it is that you are close to friends, family, anyone on any kind of spectrum with mental illness or degenerative disease, it is our practice that will give us strength to carry on. And it is also, that person or people, because, at a certain age, I too understand there could be multiple people in your life at one time that are just dealing with life and change and whatever that kind of materializes as. But that's our practice.
Mhm.
And we're practicing now coming together and having this discussion, taking refuge in the Sangha so that we can build strength to go back and give of ourselves in any capacity that we can. And then to have the awareness when we need
Mhm.
to step back and care for ourselves. So that's just something that kind of occurred to me. And I hope that helps Ranigan. I'm bowing out.
Thank you all. All of that was very helpful. I think what's hard for me is to say this isn't about me, it's about them. I have to just think about them. Excuse me. But the practice is me coming to the practice. And so that was very helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
James, you had something you wanted to say earlier?
I did. I put my hand down because it wasn't a fully formed thought, but I would like to comment just a little bit. Thank you, Kimberly, for those comments. They're relevant to my current experience. So yeah, I really like that connection that you drew. So Shanti Deva, I think he wrote a little bit a long time ago before functional magnetic resonance imaging, to where we can see the activity of the mind, even thoughts, even somebody paying attention to music in the body, the brain, the physical aspects of the body. And also with the nervous system, the whole story follows state thing, where if you have tension in the body, the neck, the chest, it affects the type of thoughts that you have, the parts of the brain that are active and access to different mental states and thoughts and actions too. So taking that into account, I kind of see this as aspirational. It's sort of a model, thinking about the mind sort of being separate and the ability to, sort of choose maybe a paramita to in a given situation to use to respond to, instead of being so influenced by the body state. And this is where it's not a fully formed thought, so I hope it's making a little bit of sense. But to be able to, and this is where the discussion before about feelings, Vedana, and emotions come in, to be able to notice, like, there's tension in my, just different feelings in the body, different sensations, which can a lot of times predispose a certain, emotional state and responses. If I do notice those things, like, hey, I've got tension, I've, noticed that, my body is sore, then I can really notice those things, sometimes even in the moment after a whole bunch of practice, thank goodness, in a situation, and not, fly off the handle, because I know that I'm kind of predisposed to being emotional, but instead I could just make a note of it. This is pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and then respond in a way that's kind of more from the mind, instead of from maybe the body, maybe the emotion. Hope that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that can be very helpful that is understanding what's going on in your body as certain things are coming up. going back to my days as a psychiatrist, I had a man who was incredibly rigid and as angry as he could be, and he could not in any way access his anger. We worked and worked and worked. And it was probably several years into it, he realized that when he got angry, there was this little thing he got in the bottom of his belly. That was it. He was then able to understand that was his trigger. Not trigger, but that was his sign that he was starting to get angry. And then he was able to start working on it. And I think a lot of times in Zazen, being able to pay attention to what's going on physically can be very helpful in unlocking also what's going on emotionally. So. Anything else? Okay, let's. Oops. The next verse, verse 53 says, "Scorn and hostile words and comments I do not like to hear, my body is not harmed by them. What reason do I have, O mind, for your resentment?" It's pretty straightforward, I think. We do that. I can't, how many times do we respond to someone because of something they say verbally, but in fact, we're not harmed by those. We take umbrage to them, but they don't hurt us. And so why do we resent them? And I do as much as anybody else, but we do. Kimberly, were you going to
Sure.
do you have something you wanted to add?
Sure. So sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Oh my God.
Absolutely. Went right through my mind the first time I read it.
Coming of age, or they're all being a teenager, all the hormones, and just having such agony with the other girls at school and crying to my mother and all this stuff. But truthfully, to go back to this idea of, they do hurt. They do. And words, anger, words, they do hurt. Let's face it. And I want to go back to this whole idea of feeling tone in the body, how emotions are a roadmap. And thank goodness that we have our Zazen practice. And the more we practice, the more we have this ability as we go out into the world off the cushion to have a lot of space before the reactivity and more space to stop the reactivity, even if it's just for a moment or two, and then space to respond. I'm going to jump around a little bit and ask again, and I've said this as a response to another Dharma talk, and I think it was a Jukai teaching on a Saturday. Like this, the question of where is my mind? My mind, where is your mind? The mind, there's no difference, and we know that in science, as James was pointing out. So there's a whole, I mean, people, there may be a formal name in Buddhism for it, but a whole practice of tuning into the body
Mhm.
as you used in your practice in Western psychology, tuning into the body to get those feeling tones. Feeling tones. And to go back to what Dean was saying, the feeling tones. Positive, negative, neutral.
There,
It's a practice.
yeah.
I'll bow out.
Oh, no,
just
that's
all
fine.
over the place,
That's fine.
but I'll bow out.
There certainly is, and I wish I could tell you his name. There is a Tibetan whose practice really centers on the very thing you're talking about. It is very body focused and body sensation focused. And sorry, if I think of it, I'll let you know. But he very much believes just what you're saying. That's where you start, and that's where his practice and what he teaches is. He keeps coming back to the body, back to the body, back to the body, as a way of, and then using that as a way of developing that space. And I like what you talked about with the space, because that's what we're trying to do, is get that wedge in there, get that space in there to be able to choose how we react, to choose how we act, I should say. React in this case can have multiple meanings. So I'll use act as what we do in response to something, and react as the emotional. Rannigan.
Excuse me. I think I'd like to know if this is what you're talking about, John, is that there's a Tibetan practice where you feel how it makes you feel, and then you send light and love back to the person that made you feel that way. And I've used that a lot. It does help lessen my resentments toward people that I feel have hurt me. There's a name for it, but I can't think of it right now.
I think, are you referring to Tonglen?
Tonglen. Yes, it's Tonglen. Yeah.
Yeah. This is much more sweeping than that. I mean, it is his whole practice is
Okay.
focused on on identifying various physical manifestations of, and then using that as a way of, but yeah. Anything else? I think at this point we can chant out. May our intention equally penetrate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.
You did have more than 3 teachers here.
I don't know about that.
John, in your practice, did you ever, I know you've focused more on maybe the psychology of what's going on with a person, but did you ever try to make any connections between everything that's going on with them and some of the diseases they may have had?
Probably in a different way than what you're thinking.
Like the physical
because-
manifestations of stress?
But
you see what, Kimberly, those can actually be put away.
I was just gonna ask all of them.
All the chairs,
chairs.
all the chairs.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.